July, 64 AD. A single spark ignites in the crowded slums near the Circus Maximus, turning a summer breeze into a furnace. Within minutes, the narrow alleys of Rome become chimneys of death, trapping thousands in a whirlwind of ash and flame. Panic grips the eternal city as the fire leaps from rooftop to rooftop with supernatural speed. Families scream in the streets, their desperate cries drowned out by the roar of a conflagration that refuses to be extinguished. And there, perched high above the devastation, stands Emperor Nero. He isn't fleeing or fighting, he is watching, his face illuminated by the glow of a city turning into a funeral pyre. History tells us Nero played the lyre while Rome burned, a symbol of ultimate psychotic indifference. But was this the act of a madman, or a calculated move by a strategist who saw a ruined city as a blank canvas? Today, we strip away the propaganda of the victors to uncover the truth. We will explore how the Great Fire wasn't just a disaster, but the catalyst for an empire's architectural rebirth and a descent into unprecedented tyranny. To understand the fire, we must first understand the Rome of the 1st century. It was a sprawling metropolis of over 1 million people, a chaotic blend of marble palaces and suffocating, wooden apartment blocks known as insulae. These insulae were death traps, built cheaply and hastily, often leaning against one another. In a city where open hearths were the only source of heat and light, a single tipped lamp was a potential death sentence for a whole district. At the center of this volatile environment was Nero, a young emperor groomed by the philosopher Seneca. Early in his reign, he was seen as a promising leader, focusing on the arts and diplomacy rather than the brutal militarism of his predecessors. However, the pressure of the throne and the stifling expectations of the Roman Senate began to warp his psyche. Nero's passion for the theater and music was mocked by the elite, creating a growing rift between the emperor and the ruling class. By 64 AD, Rome was a tinderbox, not just physically, but politically. The city was ripe for a catastrophe, and Nero's growing obsession with grandeur had already begun to strain the imperial treasury. As the embers of the Great Fire cooled, Nero didn't see a tragedy, he saw a blank canvas. While the displaced population slept in the streets, the emperor began sketching a vision of a city that would dwarf all others in antiquity. This was the birth of the Domus Aurea, the Golden House. It wasn't just a palace, but a sprawling complex of artificial lakes, orchards, and galleries that swallowed entire city blocks of the ruins. Inside, Nero pushed engineering to its breaking point. He commissioned a rotating dining room that mimicked the celestial movements of the planets, ensuring his guests felt the cosmos revolving around him. But luxury requires a scapegoat. As rumors of Nero's arson grew, the emperor pivoted, directing the public's simmering rage toward a small, misunderstood sect, the Christians. The persecution was not merely a political move, it became a spectacle. Nero transformed the imperial gardens into a theater of cruelty, using the accused as living torches to light his nocturnal parties. The tension in Rome reached a boiling point. The nobility viewed the Golden House as an act of hubris and the Christians suffering as a sign of a regime that had completely lost its moral compass. The breaking point arrived not from the streets, but from the frontiers. In 68 AD, a rebellion ignited in Gaul and Spain, led by generals who realized that Nero's obsession with art and architecture had left the empire vulnerable. While the empire crumbled, Nero remained secluded in his golden sanctuary. He continued to perform his lyre and sing of Greece, oblivious to the fact that the Senate had officially declared him an enemy of the state. The end was not a grand battle, but a desperate flight. Forced into exile and facing certain execution, Nero's final act was as dramatic as his life, a self-inflicted wound to the throat. His final words, "What an artist dies in me," sealed his legacy. He died not as a statesman or a conqueror, but as a performer who viewed the entire Roman Empire as his personal stage. The tragedy reached its peak not in the flames, but in the aftermath. To divert the mob's rage, Nero scapegoated the Christians, unleashing a wave of state-sponsored brutality that saw believers torn apart by dogs or burned as human torches to light his gardens. This was the dark climax of his reign, the transition from a misguided artist to a sadistic tyrant. Despite the horror, the Great Fire fundamentally changed Rome. The chaotic, narrow alleyways of the old city were replaced by wide streets and stone buildings, creating a blueprint for urban planning that would influence cities for centuries. The Domus Aurea proved that architecture could be used as a tool of psychological dominance and imperial propaganda. History remembers Nero as the man who fiddled while Rome burned, but the reality is more complex. The fire served as a catalyst, exposing the fragility of the Julio-Claudian dynasty and the dangerous volatility of a leader with absolute power. It taught the world that an empire built on vanity and blood is destined to collapse under its own weight. The legacy of the Great Fire lives on in the tension between authority and the people. From the ashes of the old city rose a new Rome, but the scars of Nero's cruelty left a permanent mark on the Roman psyche, forever altering the relationship between the emperor and the citizens he claimed to serve. Nero's empire was built on fire and finished in blood, leaving us to wonder, was he a monster, or a product of the system he inherited? To see how other fallen empires met their dramatic ends, watch our deep dive into the collapse of the Bronze Age.